Welcome back to Hawkeye Skunk Works. Today I'm going to bring you a little bit of Jeep content. I know I've been lacking in the Jeep department. I'm sorry. It's not because I want to. That's just kind of how things go sometimes. So, with no further ado, stay tuned. We are going to do something that has never been done before. The cheapest third-gen Toyota 4Runner in the entire country. I have bought another 4Runner.
Dad, everything is blowing!
And that, my friends, is one of the greatest parts about being here. Again, yes, I'm sorry that the Jeep content has been lacking. Unfortunately, as I've said before, I have all the parts that I need to work on it, but as far as projects go, it's been last on the priority list between other cars and family stuff and house stuff. So I will get around to it, but I thought I would take a little time to make this video. Pretty much every time that I post a Jeep video, I get comments about, hey, I'm thinking about getting a Grand Cherokee. What do you think? Or what do you think I should do with the Grand Cherokee that I have? And Instagram posts too. Well, I think at this point most of you already know my thoughts on what vehicle to get. But I realize that's not always the case in everyone's thought process. You really want a Jeep, you want a Grand Cherokee specifically. Yes, 4Runners are a little bit more expensive on average, so maybe that's not in your price range. Whatever. There's a huge Jeep community out there. There's tons of aftermarket support. I completely understand. So I thought I would make this little video just talking about some of my favorite things about the Grand Cherokee and some of my less than favorite things. So specifically, I'll be talking about 99 to 04 Grand Cherokees. This is a 2000 Laredo model. Four-wheel drive, has a select track transfer case, which means you have your two-wheel drive, your four-wheel drive, high and low options. Has the 4-liter straight 6 in it, and I'm pretty sure the only option that this thing came with when it was new was fog lights. I don't think it had any. It didn't have power seats, it didn't have leather, it doesn't have a sunroof. So yeah, start things off. I've said this 1,000 times to people. On paper, I think that this Jeep is fantastic. Overall, it's great. The design is great. The drivetrain is good. The styling is good inside and out. The space is pretty good. But the execution, not so fantastic. In my opinion, from the factory, a lot of subpar materials were used as far as, materials for bushings and stamped steel suspension components. And yes, a lot of other vehicles have that issue, and it can obviously be made better by replacing all of that stuff, which is what I'm doing. And if you do any research on suspension for these things, everyone says putting a long travel suspension on these, even with just a couple inches of lift, I'm not talking about a massive amount of lift, completely changes the dynamic of how it rides and drives. Rightfully, a $2,000 suspension system should. The drivetrain itself, solid axles, great. There was a lot of different options that you could get it with. Dana 30s, Dana 35s, I think like a 7.5 or 8.25, I don't know. Everything that it came with. But as you probably well know, I'm switching to the Dana 44 in the rear with the 373s and the limited slip, and the Dana 30 front with 373s and limited slip. Those were factory options. Great options. And again, I have the selectable transfer case, which is great. I think the four-wheel drive works really well. And this same transfer case even came in a heavier duty version that some of the V8 models had. They're kind of hard to find, but it was out there, so that's even a step above. Drive shafts, rear drive shafts were all U-joint drive shafts. The front ones came in a variety with Rezepa or CV style joints, which were garbage, and I have swapped out for the double cardan factory shaft that has been fantastic. In the front of this, you could get skid plate options, you could get factory tow hooks in the front. I don't know about the back. The 4-liter is a great engine. It doesn't make a ton of power, and yes, it's noisy, but it's still a good engine. And yes, from like, what, 99 or 98, I think, to 04, there was an issue with the casting in the head, and they were prone to cracking. And when I say prone to cracking, I mean they all cracked eventually. This one has cracked. I had to replace it. Some of the 4.7s, I've driven a 4.7 Grand Cherokee, tons of power, and some of those had timing chain problems, but that's kind of par for the course for a lot of overhead cam timing chain driven engines of that era. A lot of it I feel is a maintenance issue, just keep up with it. Transmissions were an issue. It's a Chrysler transmission. This one was replaced at 75,000 miles, but again, a lot of transmissions of that era had issues. So the leather seats that come in these Grand Cherokees are probably the most comfortable seats I've ever sat in. No, the leather doesn't hold up very well. Again, kind of par for the course for that era. But as far as just the cushioning and the leather and just the overall seating position, I think it's fantastic. Speaking of seating position, the steering wheel is not centered in front of the driver's seat, which is the weirdest thing. And apparently not that uncommon in vehicles of any era. It is set over to your left. And it took me a long time to get used to that. I had to start, when I was daily driving, that's when I got used to it. And now that I am used to it, I don't notice it while I'm driving it. I also don't notice it when I am switching back and forth between like my work vehicle and the 4Runner and stuff. So takes some getting used to, but after that, not a big deal. Interior wise, I like the layout of the interior. It's a little dated, I suppose, now, but I think it still looks pretty good. Overall, some of the materials are really good, some of them not fantastic, but I think that's a win. I like it. The space on the interior is fine. I have said before that compared to my Explorer and the 4Runner, it's a little lacking for my taste. If you are by yourself or even two or whatever, you're not taking long trips, fantastic. You can fold the back seats down, and with that seat mod where you can make it so you can remove the seat bottoms, I'm fairly certain a 6-foot tall person could sleep back there, or over 6 foot, perfectly fine. So we've got all the creature comforts you would want. Some of them came with heated seats. This one did not, again, but I have added heated seats to this, so that's been fantastic. It's got overhead console with your mileage and temperature and compass and stuff. That's really good. Again, it is a unibody, which I've said I'm not a fan of. A lot of people say there's nothing wrong with it. Also, a lot of those people are the same ones you'll see welding in subframe gussets and inner fender steel liner supports and stuff. So take that for what you will. A lot of people probably would never even notice it. It's just one of my weird things. So I think we can say Drivetrain, pretty good. Keep up on the maintenance. For the 4-liter, the head is probably going to be an issue. But I don't think it's lacking in power significantly. It just doesn't have, it's just not overpowered. 4.7's a good engine. 4.7 HO, the high output, is good. Maintenance, you got to keep up on that, just like with anything else. Transmissions, I have found and am a firm believer still, again, with any transmission, regular fluid changes, sometimes filter changes, that just kind of depends. Will help longevity of a transmission. Suspension, if you're going to buy one of these for off-roading, you're going to upgrade the suspension anyway, so that's not a big deal. The axles, for the weight of the vehicle, and unless you're going to be doing some crazy off-roading, axles should be perfectly fine, especially when you get into those 373s. You're running 31-inch tires or 33s, the car is going to act basically how it was, the way it came set up from factory. The limited slips, those wear out. All limited slips wear out. But, you know, it's cheap and easy. It's a direct swap in, those axles. The interior is good. Overall, I have no complaints about the interior except for the steering wheel is kind of weird and the space is not quite to my liking, but my dash hasn't cracked. You know, you can get all the creature comforts that you want. I've swapped in the white face gauges out of a limited, which is a direct bolt-in. You can put a double DIN radio in relatively easily. And yeah, you got a fair amount of storage space and cup holders, so that's good. Seats are comfortable. Overall, I think if you can find a well-maintained, rust-free one of these at a decent price, it's a great beginner vehicle to get into off-roading. Tons of aftermarket support. Jeep community for the most part is great, just like any automotive community. There, there's lots of good, and then there's a few rotten apples. So I think I've touched on a fair amount of things that I like and that I don't like. If you have any further questions, feel free to leave the comment down below. Be sure to check out some of my other videos on the Grand Cherokee, and there will be more videos coming, I promise. I can't do anything else with this. Eventually I'm going to sell it, but I can't sell it until I've done all the suspension and axle swaps. So I've got to do that. One thing I did forget to mention, my favorite little thing about this is on the wiper stalk, it has what's called a mist feature, and you can just push it down and it'll just go off once just to clear your windshield when it's hardly raining, but you need to clean your windshield. You don't have to turn it off or turn it on and then turn it back off. You can just hit that once, and my 4Runner doesn't even have that. So, my 05 Japanese built, family SUV doesn't have that. So that's one of my favorite little features. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. I really appreciate that. Be sure to turn the notifications on so you get notified every week when I drop a video, because it's not always at the same time. Unfortunately, my schedule doesn't always let that happen. So head on over to Instagram and Facebook. Follow me over there. There's links down below for both of those pages. I post almost daily, pretty much daily over there, and not just automotive stuff, all kinds of stuff about what's going on in my life. And yeah, thank you for watching. Until next time, take care. Goodbye.